right, so welcome to our special board meeting, the fourth Tuesday of the month. These meetings are really meant to talk about specialized subjects. Tonight on our agenda, the specialized subject is the marijuana dispensary lounge discussion. It's really meant to introduce the process, because I want to have more meetings about this, whatever we need to, but it's really to talk about the process associated with it. So I want to take the first half hour on that, and the last half hour on regular business, and then we're going to adjourn to go into executive session. All right, so with that, I'd like everybody to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think you'll notice that we're down 2 trustees. Trustee Lewitt, Trustee Slavey are on vacation and will not be participating in today's call. There is some literature on the table, if you didn't pick it up on your way in, that is really going to be the basis of the discussion on the information on the legalization of marijuana in New York State.
Is that the same that was posted late today?
Yes.
Well, I don't know when it got posted.
Yes.
Same information. Okay, so as I mentioned, these are kind of special board meetings to talk about specific subjects. And the subject I want to talk about tonight is to just introduce the process for the legalization of marijuana for dispensaries, lounges in the village of Rhinebeck. We, the board, has not made a decision. There's no predetermined outcome here. It's really now to start about the process, start talking about it, and then see where we go. Because there are some critical deadline dates that we have to meet as a municipality. So what I'd like to do is, it's going to be a little bit open. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. But we're going to go through this outline. Okay, so if everybody remembers, back in March of this year, Governor Cuomo introduced the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. That was on March 31st of 2021. So when he signed this into law, it invoked a lot of changes for cities, towns, and villages, all which may vary depending on which municipality you live in. We in the village of Rhinebeck have also that decision to make. So what it means is that, as we go through this process, we have a deadline of December 31st of this year to make some critical decisions as we move forward. So when we put this in, right, even though this law was passed, we do not expect any, let's just say something did. New York State's not going to move forward to 22-23 with permitting of anything. So they're forming another agency that is going to provide oversight of the state regulations in terms of the sale, the distribution, all of that, the permitting process with marijuana. So, in summary, you can look at this as that framework is a lot analogous to the alcohol beverage laws that were passed. If you think about a dispensary as an alcohol store that you walk into or may walk into today, and you think about a lounge as the equivalent to a bar. Okay, that's kind of the analogy that we're putting in place here. So there will be retail stores, which are called dispensaries, as I just mentioned, right? And there's going to be, and on-site consumptions, which are going to be called lounges. As we go forward, you'll learn, we'll talk more about this. But the state, is prohibiting that sale, just like they do with alcohol within certain regions. So it can't be within 500 feet of a school, 200 feet of a house of worship, right? Just like the alcohol laws. One of the big things that differs between the marijuana legislation and the alcohol legislation is the sales tax. When the sales tax got passed, it's a 13% sales tax. 9% goes to the state, 4% goes to the county, and of that 4%, 1% the county keeps, the 3% is then distributed to those who have dispensaries. Right? So essentially, if we were to do that, we would end up with 3%, if there was a dispensary, we would end up with 3% sales tax. revenue direct to our municipality. It gets a little bit different if you look at a village within a town, because we are a village within a town of Rhinebeck. There, and if town has a dispensary and the village has a dispensary, if there's not an agreement between town and a village, the county has to split that 3% 50-50. So depending on what the town does, depending on what we do or whatever, that would negate some negotiations with the town on that sales tax revenue, right? So if the, you know, under that state law, you know, again, cannabis can be done anywhere that you can smoke a cigarette today. It's out on the sidewalk, in front of your house, wherever, you know, wherever you can smoke a cigarette, you can smoke cannabis, given that law. And that's something we can't change. We can prohibit it in parks. We can prohibit it in municipal buildings, which no smoking is allowed to begin with. You know, we can pass regulations that prohibit those places, but out in the general public, if you smoke a cigarette, you can smoke marijuana. Sure.
So are we just talking about literally like smoking it or consumption? Because now cannabis comes in many forms.
The way I understand it, that's for the smoking.
Okay.
My interpretation, right? Because the edibles, or whatever they are, right, I think you're consuming them wherever, right? And I don't know how you would do that. As I mentioned, we may pass local laws and regulations governing the time, the place, the manner, and the operation of retail dispensaries and/or the on-site consumption sites, providing such laws regulations do not make it operations unreasonable or impractical, right? And then police officers will be able to inspect all licensed or permitted premises and all records of licensed operators when they're passed. Now comes the part with the deadlines that we have to go to. So at the local level, right, we can either opt in or opt out, okay? Opt in means if we, unless the village passes a local law to opt out, preventing the cannabis sales, we would have to do that before December 31st of this year. We would have to opt out, right? If you opt out, you can always opt in later. But if you opt in, you can never opt out, right? So that's the way that works, right? So as a rule, if the village opts in, retail and/or on-premises sales cannot be prohibited, but can be subject to local zoning. But if we opt in, we can opt in on dispensaries. We can opt in on dispensaries and lounges, or we can prohibit one or the other when we opt in, right? Again, if we opt in, we got to get our zoning regulations in place. We got to have all that in place before December 31st. Because even though there may not be something until 2023, if we were approached by a commercial establishment, in between that time, we would have no recourse to stop them from doing it unless we have zoning regulations in place. So it's important that we move quickly.
Yeah, and assuming that the zoning that we have in place right now is inadequate to cover.
Correct.
Which it partially is, partially isn't by my
Right.
estimation.
But all that needs to be done.
Sorry.
Right. All right, so here's the issues with opting in. One of the things we just talked about. Our village code may not directly address all of the issues that we have to work on. Would dispensaries be considered a retail use under current zoning code? Or how are we to regulate lounges, which is not defined? And is a cannabis, so this analogy that I gave you tonight, you know, the analogy to alcohol sales, is that really applicable? We're learning a lot. There was an article just today that came out in one of our magazines that we received, Municipal Matters, that talked about New York marijuana legislation. And it pretty much goes through that process. You know, and it gets more into, if we were to opt out, we have to do a permissive referendum. And so to opt out means we need to go to vote to the community and get a vote from the community to opt out. We as a board cannot make that decision, right, without having a permissive referendum if you opt out.
Could
If
I,
we opt out, does that mean permissive referendum, a citizen needs to gather enough signatures to force it to permissive referendum
Or-
or automatically?
So
we can, go ahead.
It's called a special permissive referendum.
Okay,
And as a board, we can bypass the vote, the collection of signatures, and set the date for the vote.
okay.
Yeah. And kind of defined here, when we lock it, when you, there's conducting a permissive referendum for cities, and there's conducting a permissive referendum in villages. A little bit different processes.
And we can split that issue into dispensaries and into lounges.
Lounges.
But that vote would have to be done before December 31st.
Yes. Yep.
So we don't have much.
Which is why I'm trying to push this forward now, because I think time is of the essence. No matter which process you take, you still have to deal with the time. You have to deal with the time of whether you're opting in or opting out. There's processes that have to go along with that. So, I'm going to open up questions from the board first, so we can talk, if you want to talk about it, and then if anybody in the public wants to ask any questions.
So my comments are, and I'll be brief, I'm concerned about a drug that's not regulated by the FDA. I don't know what New York State's mechanism is going to be put in place. They talked about having this commission. I don't know if it's going to regulate the levels of toxicity and the levels of what things are laced with, preventing things from being laced with. As far as impairment, I mean, we have PAT standards for alcohol. There's no impairment levels in New York State. So all you can do is detect it via a test. I don't know if that's a blood test or a saliva test. So it's kind of like an officer's word against the potential perpetrator's word about how impaired they were. You know, so then it's kind of like you're saying one thing, I'm saying the other. That's a kind of a testimonial argument that's very difficult to get through.
A good
to push
example of
through.
that is you're driving a car.
Right.
You're driving a car, and an officer pulls you over, right, and suspects that you've been consuming cannabis of some kind. What is the test for that, is what he's saying. So how would our officers enforce that law, right? But this is part of what the governor's program is supposed to work on for the next year, to come up with those standards, according to what they say. That's why it's going to take a while, because the governor is forming an organization that, let me just refer to something here, that will put in case all of that. So,
The Cannabis Control Board and the Office of Cannabis
Cannabis
Management.
Right.
Yeah. I printed out the same thing.
which administers the state's adult use and medical use program, promulgating the rules, the issuing the licensing, the investigating and enforcing infractions of the law. That's set up by the state, by the Office of Cannabis Management, right, and Cannabis Control Board. The regulatory framework under this law, in many ways, would be now similar to what they say is currently regulates the alcohol beverage control law in New York State Liquor Authority.
So I'm more satisfied with the EPA and how they have like this fine, well-oiled machine presumably to regulate drugs, and we're sort of like wondering what this thing's going to look like.
Yeah, we don't know.
We've had failures. I mean, the governor was in charge of the Long Island Power Authority during Sandy, and we all know what happened with that. As far as zoning, we probably would not want the Walmart of dispensaries, but it's very difficult to define. I've had experience with this in rewriting our code, like a boutique kind of thing versus something that's just a bigger type of retail. So that would be difficult. I think our definition of retail would include a dispensary, but we probably need to put a definition of lounge in if we're headed in that direction, which isn't a problem. But again, to write that lounge definition, which would have this kind of boutique kind of application instead of, you know, the sort of super bars or whatever, for marijuana use, I don't know. It's difficult. And, you know, it's a gateway drug. Let's face it, it does lead to some drug addiction and the difficulty of the not having an impairment level that we can measure if people are out and about in the community is an enforcement problem. So my sense is that because we can opt out later on, we could actually opt out for now and see how the state runs this thing and sees if there's actually, we can get some data and whether we have a lot of impairment issues across the state and keep an eye on it, and then 2 years later we could opt in.
But we still have to do a permissive referendum if we opt out, which we don't know how that will go.
So that, my opinion is that I'd go either way with that. I think as a board I'm willing to opt out and then not send it to the public under my own volition, but that they could petition for permissive referendum if they wanted to. So that's where I'm at for now.
I think we're gonna have this impairment problem no matter what, right? Because even if we don't have retail dispensaries in the village or lounges in the village, it's legal to consume. So I think that's a really good point, and it's something that, maybe having a lounge in the village would exacerbate, but it's still gonna be an
Right.
issue.
Yeah, you're not going to stop it by opting out.
No.
Right.
They're still going to be consumed on the street or smoked on the street or wherever, even if we opt out. You're not eliminating any of that.
Right.
No.
And we have not received any requests by any businesses looking into this already at this point, correct?
No.
Right. And do we have a sense of the size of, if we did have a dispensary, what kind of money we're talking about in terms of, are we missing out on a huge revenue stream because of the sales tax if we were to opt out?
I can only tell you what I participate in the Supervisors and Mayors Conference, which is a monthly meeting. We've been talking about this for the past 2 meetings. There are some municipalities in Dutchess County that have been approached by other businesses to be able to do that. They asked that question. And when they were asked that question, they said that they expect dispensaries to do $1 million a month. That was the feedback. And so $1 million a month in sales, 4% of that, right, is 40,000, right? And so we get 3% of whatever we sell, which if that would be here, we get 3% of that.
But I didn't know about this splitting the town issue.
Yeah, that's the other issue. Now, discussion could be, what if the town doesn't have a dispensary, and we do, right? Is that still have to be negotiated?
I read the NICOM stuff and I didn't see that thing about splitting. If it's our jurisdiction.
It is definitely there. And if a retail dispensary is located in the village within a town that also permits cannabis retail sales, okay, so let's say if they both have, then the county must distribute the monies attributed to such retail dispensary to the town and village as agreed upon by the governing bodies of the local governments. In the absence of the agreement, the county must divide the monies between town and village, and the money will be distributed quarterly.
So we both have to be permitting it, and then they could be tough negotiators and say, we want 50% even though this dispensary is not in the town.
Right, they could. So the town
So
could
that's
benefit.
1.5 instead of 3%.
A town could benefit by not having a dispensary if the village did.
Right.
I don't think the opposite is true. I think if we did and the town did, I think we get 0.
That's right.
That's how I interpret it.
That's
But
right.
if it's the other way, the town gets it. So, yeah, to answer your question, we're not the larger municipalities which are in the southern Dutchess, but there is a revenue implication here. And that's why a lot of people are taking this as well seriously, because of the revenue implication.
Rhinebeck was sold the highest quality, where a 1,000-foot square foot house sells for $750,000. You're going to come here for the best dope you can get. So, that's what's going to happen.
Well, if you go with Brant's analogy, though, how is the state gonna regulate it? So that if you sell it and he sells it, you're selling the same thing, right? Or can you get a permit, can you get a permit to sell something better and he can't, and he doesn't then, I know.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer, that's my problem, we don't have the answer.
Or will this new organization put levels of toxicity in the, I mean, we don't know what that's gonna look like. I don't think New York needs another regulatory authority.
It's already there, we don't have a choice.
Oh yeah, it was already created.
It's already there, we don't have a choice in any of that. The choice
Yeah.
we have is to opt in or opt out, that's really the choice that we have. And we have to opt in or opt out before December 31st. And get whatever we need to have done with whatever venue you go on.
Again, if we opt out, we have the luxury of watching to see how New York sorts this out.
And we can always opt in, you can always opt in,
Opt in later.
providing the referendum proves the opt-out.
Right.
So we have about 7 minutes left. I thought you were going to talk about process. I thought you meant, when you started by saying, I want to talk about the process. I thought that meant you were going to talk about the process that the village board was going to use to get public input across the broad spectrum on this. So I'd like you to address what the process will be as you go forward. I understand the deadlines, and I've read this, but the process is particularly important.
So what I'd like to do, and I'd like to work with the board on this, is hold 2 more meetings in the month of August. Because I believe that by September, we need to make a decision one way or other to allow us enough time for another process. So 2 more community engagement workshops to get public input.
I would also like to suggest, to your point, because I'm actually at a place where I don't know what the community wants about this. This is not
Right.
something that I have a sense of. So I was going to suggest maybe we also do a survey. Not everyone can come and do a workshop, but maybe there's another way just to get a pulse read on what the community really wants. Would you be open to that?
It's, you know how the old saw about if you get to write the question, you can engineer the answer, but it's kind of who's going to write the questions?
I mean, we could write the questions and bring it to the workshop, and then have some public input on how the question is phrased, to try to make it non-biased.
That also, a lot of times when there's a zealous feeling on one way or the other, those are the folks that answer the petitions, or the petition questions. I mean, I'm just saying that. I'm not objecting to what you're saying.
It can be an input though. I mean, it can't be the sole input, it may not be the sole input,
Yeah.
but it could be
Just
a
need more
factor into
information.
the input.
You know?
If we can get it done in time and get it out and get the results back and share those results.
Yeah.
But I believe we have to do it in the month of August.
I mean, we put it on the agenda tonight, and it looks like there's 3 or 4 people that came here for this. Or not. I mean, I don't. That's all. Sometimes that's all we can do is put things on the agenda and have it.
Well, you know,
Workshop
the mayor
discussion.
writes a monthly message. There's a lot you can do, you know, if you want to, there's a lot you can do. Reacting to the August deadline, August is it, even during, you know, this weird situation we're in now, August is a tough time for a lot of people, you know, you got two people that are not here, they're on vacation. Well, the same thing gonna happen in August. So I would encourage you to not stick to that, give some consideration to maybe having one in August and one in September. You know, I think you can back into this. I just hope you don't have preconceived notions about this. Brant, you were talking more like you're individual, not in the role as a trustee. At least that was my, you know, you're up there as trustees, elected officials. So
Yeah, I know, and I'm giving my first blush. And I said, and I even did a qualifier at the end.
Yeah, I
I said,
understand.
that's where I'm at for now. Is where I said.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Right.
You know, this document was not up early in the day, when this meeting was announced, this document was not available to people. It probably became available late in the afternoon, because I checked a couple times today. But I think you have an obligation to, and not just on this, but this is what's before us now, an obligation to make a good faith effort, to get people in here. I don't know I don't know what the community has to say about this. You know, there is a sales tax implication, you know. 1.5% is more than zero. That, you know, I don't know. What would happen if one opened in Rhinecliff? How does that affect the village? Nothing? Is that
If
what
it's in
you
the
s-
town,
That's in the town.
Right, I
and we
understand.
don't, my opinion, based on reading everything that I've read so far, we get zero.
So it sounds like.
That's my,
So, I mean, I
that's
think-
my interpretation of where it is right now.
I think the mayor did a good job in doing a kickoff of what the issues are. So I think that's, at this point, that's all we can do. I mean, I'm not prepared to make any giant steps tonight either with only 3 people here.
I'm not either. I wanted to introduce it.
And, you know,
I hear you too on August being a tough time, people are out, maybe we could do one workshop early September. You know,
Yeah,
people
I'm
coming
actually-
back for schools
I'm
and,
leaving the second half of August myself.
yeah.
I'll be here for the regular monthly board meeting, but I won't be here that 2 weeks after, 2 Tuesdays after that.
Yeah.
Right now, it's,
Anything during Fair Week.
right, Fair Week Forget, exactly.
Right.
And the fair is August 24th, I believe, is when the fair starts. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but I would like to have some more,
Mm,
get the word out,
yeah,
try to get the public. Vanessa, if you want to take the lead on a,
on a survey?
Survey?
I would,
I would,
yes.
I would.
I'm honestly very curious, but yeah, I don't know, I also just feel like something I hear over and over again is we already have too much traffic, we already have too much tourism. Do we need more people coming in to the village? So I have that kind of in the back of my head that, you know, this is legal, maybe it could be elsewhere. I don't know if it needs to be, if Rhinebeck Village needs another draw in. But again, those are just some opinions that I keep in the back of my mind. And I feel like I just need to hear more from the community.
Just ask a question. Gary, from what you read, your interpretation, the lounges, just for smoking, so they would not be able to be combined with the existing bars?
Or not smoking, because smoking's still illegal
Well,
outdoors, but
I mean, that's-
consumption.
That's
Well,
true.
no, you can go in, I'm assuming, like, if you have gummy bears, you could be eating a cannabis gummy bear wherever you want.
Right.
Right. But if you wanted to smoke a joint, that would be kind of like where the Liberty Bistro expanded, they have the cigar shop. Remember that? Were you here, Vanessa?
No.
Okay. I'm thinking that's what a lounge would be. You go in there, but you couldn't be selling alcohol with cannabis.
It's on everything, again, my interpretation, a lounge for marijuana use is strictly a lounge for marijuana
That's
use,
true, yeah.
Alone, okay.
right? It doesn't include alcohol or
They
anything
might
else.
have to provide for munchies, but
Right.
it would be served.
Or
Okay.
could you have an
And that's why the police are allowed to, we have one in the back, are allowed to go and enforce those, part. And that's why I put it in here. Right, police officers will be able to inspect all licensed or permitted premises and all records of licensed operators, right? So there is already a state mandate for enforcing the businesses, right? But not doing enforcement on the business.
Wait, dispensary, not.
I think it's both. I think the police could inspect for a dispensary and a lounge. I think that is, again, interpretation, that is allowed if we were to do both. That is an inspection process. Now, we also have, as we talked about, the Office of Cannabis Management, right, and the State Cannabis Control Board. What are they going to do? The Alcohol Board currently inspects where alcohol is sold and or consumed, right?
Is there a way that you can confirm whether or not your interpretation on these issues is, whether you go to the village's legal counsel or your professional organization, or someone other than Gary sitting up there, both for your protection, you know, I would think you want to do that. I know
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, we will. And that's something that we're discussing at the mayors and supervisors meeting. How can we get those people into our municipalities? And how can we confirm what the future is? Because I don't know, and I'm going to tell you, I deal with all of the mayors and supervisors in Dutchess County, and we're all at the same level. We're all trying to figure this out. We're all trying to do it at the same time, and nobody has more information than the other one
Yeah,
today.
and even, they'll be doing webinars for mayors and supervisors, I would imagine, right?
Hope
To
so.
explain.
But that would be from like NICOM.
Right,
Yeah, that would be NICOM, and there's two different organizations.
yeah,
New York Towns Association and NICOM for us for villages.
yeah.
And they put a short fuse on it too. I mean, the state did.
Yeah, there's not much time.
So-
Okay.
And we have other things to do, believe it or not.
Yes. So unless there's anything else, before I would like to maybe try to set a first meeting, so that we can start getting the word out. Okay? And so we have an official board meeting on the second Tuesday, which is the 10th already. The following week, on the 17th, is the week before the fair starts. So I was thinking of the 17th. Are you?
I'm not going to be here, but if four of you are here, then that's,
But could we tack it on to the 10th? Like have it for half an hour before?
We could have, then you want to have a 4-hour meeting or a 3-hour meeting?
Right, better to put it on one day, in my opinion.
I'd rather break it up.
I'll be at the second workshop, so as long as I get to one, second or third workshop.
17th, is that available for you?
Yes, yes.
I
I need
know.
to double check for the planning board.
What?
I need to double check for the planning board.
Okay,
That's right.
I don't know their schedule.
I know they're down to one meeting a month, but I'll double check with them.
Can we trump them? And take the meeting spot? You know. All right, so let's tentatively set the 17th and move forward, okay?
6 PM.
Yes. And it's not a special meeting, it's a workshop to continue this discussion. And again, bring in whatever information, new information we've achieved, we've done by that, okay? All right, that closes the business for alcohol and marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, anybody's welcome to stay for the rest. If you would like, the next on the agenda is a letter to the SLA for alcohol sales at Dutchess County Fair. This is from Dutchess County Agricultural Society. This is for Dutchess County Agricultural Society, the Rhinebeck RFD Entertainment, and J&S Concessions to apply for the New York State Liquor Authority for permission to sell beer and wine at the Dutchess County Fair. This is similar to what we've done, just that this is the same as we've done, the same organizations as we've done in the past. All right?
This is the tent by the live music event.
Rhinebeck Entertainment, RFD is the tent. J&S Concessions is, they have a stand down near the buildings, which they sell wine and other stuff.
Oh, okay.
And they also, now again, I don't know about this year where it's going to be. Previous years, there was another one down, you know where the main circle is, kind of the center there. If you're going out towards the main entrance, there's that pavilion under the building on your left-hand side. That was also a display.
Okay.
So I'm only aware of those three. If there's more, that's up to them. But this is to authorize the sale.
We separately approved the Foster's one, right?
You only approved the
Yeah.
Foster.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd like to make a motion to approve RFD Entertainment, J&S Concessions, and Dutchess County Agricultural Society for the State Liquor License Authority to sell this from August 24th to the 29th during the Dutchess County Fair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next is Santa Claus Village Hall application. If you remember last month, we approved the Santa Claus event at our monthly meeting, and we also approved Santa Claus to use the municipal lot. What was left out of that application was the use of this building where they do, what's it called?
The branches.
Crowns and branches. All right, for the village, for the use of the village hall, Crowns and Branches as part of the 14th annual Santa Claus celebration. Setup will be December 3rd, the event on December 4th, cleanup on December 5th. I'd like to make a motion to approve the use of village hall for Crowns and Branches for the Santa Claus.
Second?
Okay, discussion.
I'm just assuming that if we're back in a place where COVID is an issue, they'll have procedures for safety, masking.
It's probably up to us to do the village hall regulation. By then, we'll put something in effect, when you use village hall, it's X, Y, Z. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know how to predict. I'm worried, but I can't predict, right? No. Come December. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carried. And the last thing, a little bit more discussion, is the last meeting we approved going forward for the CFA grant through the Climate Smart Communities for the development of the sidewalk and the tree line pathway from South Street on South Parsonage on the east side to the bridge. Okay? The engineering team went forward with Ty and Bond to define that, and they defined that development, that process, or that piece of it to be $300,000 at their estimate. The grant is a 50-50 grant through the Climate Smart Community. So 50-50 means, obviously, we're part of the $150,000 if we were to be approved, if we were to get the approval to do this. Now, again, I talked to our treasurer today, and where we're proceeding right now with our fund balance, it still looks very positive on where we're going. You know, what's looking like where we'll close out the year, we're going to have some excess revenue to be able to put forward, but we haven't closed the books yet. But it's again looking like a positive picture for that. But I'm not saying that that's something we can use, but we also talked about using our sidewalk fund, our capital fund, which has 50 in it, around in there, and possibly our park fund, which is in the 45 or whatever, as part of that. That means we would be still on the stick for possibly coming up with another 50 to go forward.
So, didn't we vote on this? I thought we voted on this 2 weeks ago.
We did, but now what I want to do is I want to bring the resolution forward. We voted on the CFA application to move forward for the engineering, right? But now we have the final cost. I want to make sure those costs are, because we didn't know the cost at the time. We approved engineering. So the resolution reads, whereas the Village of Rhinebeck hereby requests financial assistance to the amount of $150,000 from New York State Climate Smart Communities Program pursuant to the Environmental Conservation Law, Article 54, Title 15. And then whereas the Village of Rhinebeck certifies that it has identified $150,000 of matching funds, right, either as what we work with the treasurer today, from the village general fund pursuant to the requirements of the Environmental Conservation Law, Article 54, Title 15. Now therefore be resolved, the Village of Rhinebeck hereby authorizes Mayor Gary Bassett to act on behalf and submittal of the application through the consolidated fund application for the $150,000 to be used for the Parsonage Street, Green Street, Phase 1. I'm gonna open up to we'll go to discussion. I can make a motion again to pass the resolution. Do I have a second? Then we go to discussion.
Second.
Okay. I'd like to open it up for discussion.
So, last time I was voted against what I wanted to do because I was a proxy for Vanessa and Lydia, and I didn't think it was fair for me to kill it because originally I didn't want to do this. So this time it puts me in a position to be a proxy for Lydia and Rick, because if I vote no, it seems unfair that I would kill this because they're not here, even though I didn't want to.
Well,
You see what I mean?
yeah, but
I
Rick,
did
how
that.
do you feel now that we know the numbers here and we know our financial situation?
It's still that 150,000, I just feel like we just have better places to spend it. But I won't kill it because I think it would be fair for me to be a proxy for.
The way I look at it is we really want to make the village a more walkable, safe place for pedestrians. And we take a lot of pride in our street trees and the beauty of the village. And also from an environmental perspective, this would help manage stormwater and the land's kill. So there's a lot of good things about the plan, and I don't see us spending money on sidewalks, and I feel like we should be investing in our infrastructure to make the village more walkable and safe. And I hear from a lot of folks just walking around that, cars are driving too fast, this starts narrowing the street to make it more traffic calming.
I just see that area has a very forgivable shoulder, it's kind of pleasant. I know that we have environmental issues, but if I were to spend 150,000 on sidewalks, I would probably work with homeowners in the areas where we had street trees that kicked up the dangerous places and stuff.
That area was identified in the sidewalk study plan as an area that needed a sidewalk.
Yeah, I guess originally it was in the 93 thing too.
No, the 2011.
Well, I remember phase 1 was stuff close to Village Hall, but I don't know what phase it was in.
But it was in the.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of things in the plan.
Yeah, so it was an area that was identified in the
I
beginning.
just think that dangerous sidewalks are more.
Will the public be allowed to weigh in here?
But we're in a discussion here for
Yes,
it.
well,
Not
I
yet.
don't know the protocol, that's why I'm asking, I'm still listening. We will be able to weigh in?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I want to get the board opinion now first, so everybody knows where we're at.
I mean, this thing is, we've gone down the path, so I'm not gonna
Yeah.
be the.
I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit on the fence given the numbers, but after talking to Karen, I felt better. Getting input from our treasurer that she sees a pathway if we were to be approved to do this. And the if is a big if. We were rejected the first time through the GIGP grant.
Right.
All right, we're trying a different avenue through the Climate Smart, but we don't know.
Right. It is competitive, so no guarantees, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. No, I just see it part of a larger strategy to make the village more walkable and safe. And given that this is right by the schools and the Lions Mini Park and the main connection between north and south sides of the village, I see it as a really visible and valuable place to invest in.
And as we talked, this is a 2024 investment.
Yeah.
Late 23 to 24 investment. So we actually have time to redistribute and reaccess funds if so approved. So it's not like we're going to do it tomorrow either.
Yeah,
We're not going to do it out of this year's budget.
I don't think we find out whether or not we even we're approved until December,
Right.
right?
All right, so I think we have all our opinion. If you have a question.
I do need to vote.
Yeah, no, I want to take public input and then we can vote.
Oh, okay. I apologize, I just don't know the protocol, I don't want to overstep where am I supposed to be. Brand, you're right, that it is a shoulder, but I think it would be better to be usable year-round. Come wintertime, that shoulder disappears completely because of all the snow and the stuff that piles up. And if you're a walker, you really want to walk year-round. And if you're, a kid, you want to be able to get back and forth year-round. And if you're a mother with a kid, I want my kid out walking too. So
Right, I mean, I guess I'm thinking, I would spend it more on Knollwood, and make it, I think the right of way there is pretty sizable.
I agree with you.
So I would-
You that on Knollwood too, but see, they all eventually have to be connected.
Yeah,
And if you come down Knollwood, that's where you're going to be. And right now, even if you're riding a bike, I mean, there's other ways to get around besides your feet. You've got the telephone pole right in the middle, and then a car will pass.
Yeah.
The telephone pole is about this much.
We could actually move that, but probably ask them.
Which would be great, but it hasn't been moved.
Right.
The only thing that, as a public person, I would want to see before it was approved was when Vanessa first presented it, it was up on my iPad screen, and I couldn't see the plan. And it would be nice to have it like a big sheet of paper or visible that you could go and get a feel for it instead of looking at it. Because there's so many different ways to design it, and I think that having a few different eyes on it, you might get a few
Yeah.
different valuable opinions that might work.
Thank you for that input. I do believe that even if we go ahead and apply for this grant, we can still tweak the design. So more discussion to come about the particulars of the design. To your point about Knollwood and continuing the sidewalk to the elementary school along Knollwood, great idea. I see that all of it as a piece of a safe way to school. And the reason why we're able to apply to the Climate Smart Communities Grant and why we applied to the Green Innovation Grant in part was because this was so integrated into the Landsman Kill and the stormwater management.
And the town is going to be paying for the bridge, which is, I think, a key part of the...
Yeah, the bridge is owned by the town, yeah.
Correct, and they're going to be taking care of it at around the same time, was my understanding.
Yeah, I don't know if they got that grant, did they?
Well, I don't know if they applied for it. They're looking, last I knew they were looking into, because that bridge needs to be replaced.
Correct.
Yes.
So the town, yeah, I don't know where they are in that process.
Okay, just...
It'd be nice if it was coordinated, I think is
It
your part.
sounded like it was planning to be dovetailed. I listened on the back of the Zoom days.
We suggested that.
It's a great suggestion.
Yeah, whether it happens or not, that part is out of our control.
But I love your idea of printing out some maps and actually having that available for the public to take a look at in person. It's a great idea.
We have to get this in by Friday, if we're gonna do it.
So this is still all based on whether you get the grant. If you don't get the grant, you're just not doing it, correct?
Right.
No, we're not doing it.
Building sidewalks is so expensive. It's just, it doesn't, I get a lot of sticker shock.
The one from the library, on West Market, from wherever the new sidewalk started, basically on, about a line with Oak Street and to the library, just shy of 300,000.
But that makes a huge difference. And again, that was a very generous shoulder. But a sidewalk has a curb, you are separated from the road, and the town or the village clears the road differently than it would.
Yeah,
They just
I
push
understand.
up on
That-
the shoulder.
I mean, that a little more treacherous than the area by Lions Park, but yeah.
So I brought this up the last time, I don't even know how many years ago it was, that they had the sidewalk, like public input. Those are actually bike lanes that are on South Parsonage, correct? Because they're part of the Dutchess County Route A 10-mile bike loop. So are those on South Parsonage there? What would happen to that? That is part of Dutchess County bike trail.
Yeah, I don't remember, I know we were talking about that, I don't remember,
I don't know the answer either.
yeah.
Because I remember we were talking and I said, someone said, well, there are already sidewalks going down South Parsonage. And I said, no, that's actually a bike lane for the biking trail is my understanding. But I don't know if
No,
that's true or not. And if
That white fog line that's on South Parsonage, I put that in 3 years ago to keep cars off of the edge of the road because of all the school traffic that was on there. So that white fog line has nothing to do with the bike lane. That was just for the safety of kids and show a line because we had several issues, you know, with a lot of our kids walking to school down South Parsonage. And so I put that fog line in on that side of the street to make it work.
But to your point, it should be bike-friendly as well as pedestrian.
Well, when I had asked that originally, somebody said that was a sidewalk, and I said, I thought it was a bike lane, nobody really knew the answer to that. So I was wondering if anyone ever found out the answer to that.
I remember that initiative, that we actually voted on doing that, and then we didn't do it. On striping that you're talking about. But it was in context of, the county was coming up with some plan for a bike loop also at the same time. That was like in 2014 or something.
It was a long time ago.
I don't know whatever they did with it.
I don't know what
We should look it up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion for a first, and we have a second. I'd like to call for vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I, again, I'm a proxy also.
Whatever you want to do. Okay. Okay, that concludes our business for this evening. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss wastewater treatment plan, I guess,
Uh-huh.
and then client attorney discussion.
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
We'll leave the executive session and go back into regular session. Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn our special board meeting for July 27th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you and good night.